Hello, it's Spence, the evil genius, with your WordPress tip of the day. Okay guys, now in part 2, I'm going to take up where I left off from the first part, and we're going to move down from the header into the body area. And let's refresh your memory here about the questions that were asked of us. Lucia was asking how they can make the 1/3 of the page semi-transparent gray color and how to put the menu bar on the left. And then we'll get into the widgets as well. So let's review the site that was being used as an inspiration. And what's happening here is two things. First of all, I want you to understand that the structure has as much to do with the style as the CSS does, because let's open up our Firebug, right click, inspect with Firebug, and let's examine the structure of this document. And you're going to see here that it's a very simple layout. It's a body, and then it has a header, a slider container, and then if we scroll down, it has the bottom boxes container. And what's happening is, as I could see, the content is scrolling over the top of that background image. So I suspect that the image, and I'm correct, is right here in the body. So when I use my inspector with Firebug, I can select the body tag, and then when I go to the right, I roll my mouse over and it will show and confirm that yes, there's a background image. So the first thing that we need to do over on our lab playground demo here, and you'll notice I clean this up a little bit, kind of like we're talking about, to get it in the same feel as what's going on here, is we're going to have to go ahead and do the same thing with our body. So let's inspect the background and take a look. And we have one limitation though, as always. There's always a trick to everything, isn't there? In this case, when we look at our body and everything inside of it, remember we've got that container that's kind of holding all of our junk. And the body itself is full width. So what's going to be different here is we can go ahead and simulate the effect of that, but without structurally changing things, we're not going to get this effect where the body image is fixed and the other stuff is scrolling. All right, so let's examine how this works a little bit. Okay. First of all, we need to grab that image. All right, so what we're going to do here, and I don't encourage you, you should never take artwork from another website and use it. But just so that we can make a simulation of this, I'm going to use it for demonstration purposes. I would never ever use this in a live site. Go out and create or get your own copyright or royalty-free artwork for the background. But just to show you and make this simulation look like it, I'm going to grab this by going right-click, and let me do it over here so you can see it. Right-click, and we got to get it on a place where I can see it. There we go. I take it back. Let's do it this way. Right click when you're on the body tag and you see the background, you can open up and say open image in new tab. And now what we can do is right click and save image as. And I'm just going to save this to my desktop for a second. Okay. I'll replace it. And the reason I'm going to do that is that I'm going to go ahead and show you how we're going to use it here. You'll notice that when I select the body tag on our site, it's just got a color in the background. There's no image. So let's open up our FTP. I'm using Transmit. And we have a folder inside the LabZip Responsive Child Theme. So we're in here. Let me go back and help you guys. If you've never done this before, your WordPress content from the root directory, the public HTML, is going to be in WP Content, Themes, Responsive LabZip. That's where all this good stuff we're working on is located. And there's a special folder called Images into which I can drag any custom images I need to utilize for this theme so that we don't have to worry about them being lost or deleted through the media library. And so what I did here is I took that image back and I just dragged it in. You can see I already saved it here. And it's right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and copy the URL of that. And it's going to be a strange URL because it's going to be FTP, but we'll clean it up. So when I go back with Firebug to the body tag, where the background is, I'm going to type in the following URL, and then it's got the curly brackets, and then two, I guess those are apostrophes. Now you'll notice this is strange. We don't want the FTP part. We want to take it from where the WP content / is. And see, that's where it gets weird because it always wants to do that to me. I'm going to delete everything but the /WP content /themes, and this gives us a direct location to where the file is located. And now we get a simulation of what's going on. And you'll notice that I was mentioning before, you see this body is fixed with all the goodies inside of it, right? And so you don't get that effect of everything else scrolling along with it. And there's ways for us to work on that, but we'll take that for another tutorial. So for right now, just to give you the effect, we're going to say that, all right, this stuff at least is showing you where the background image is located and how to give the look and feel of that. Now, let's commit this to our CSS for a moment. So we're going to open up our transmit. And remember, we're looking for the LabZip custom CSS file. And when we open that up, that's where we can save all those changes, right? And I can do a little note to myself. Now, typically I organize these in a logical order with no spaces when I'm done. But in the meantime, I can use little comments here. And this is a slash with an asterisk. And then the comment will go in the middle, and I'll say, this is for body background. And I don't recommend you need to do this. This is just to keep us sort of orderly when we're making this video. And actually, I notice I'm off the screen there, so let's try it like that. So basically, there we go, that should show up. I'm making a note, and I'm closing it with an apostrophe and another slash, and note the direction. This is where I'm going to paste this info in, and as always, I'm only going to leave in what I need. And when I save that, that will commit this background image to being part of our design. Okay, so now we got a bigger issue. We have to come up with a way. Let me close this. We have to come up with a way to get this bottom area with the transparency. Well, how did they do that? Well, it's another layer. It's another division. And I'll prove that to you by inspecting it. And you can see here, let me move this up, that division by itself is called boxes container, and it's got its own transparent PNG file. So let's do the same as before. We're going to save this to our desktop for learning purposes, right? So open image in new tab, and I'm going to save image as to the desktop, save it. Okay. All right, now that we've done that, we can go ahead and see where and how we're going to do this. Well, we have to add a divider in here somewhere. And I don't know where Lucia wants to do it, but I'm going to say let's try to do it right above the widget area to the bottom. Now, in order to make this work, we have to decide if this is also going to encompass the footer, because there's three parts to this page. There's the header, there's the body, and then there's the footer. And just to prove that to you, let me use that trick I showed you before. Remember in the first video how I told you you can designate certain areas with a temporary border to help you understand where they are? So this is what I'm going to do. Border, and then I'm going to say 1 pixel solid red. That'll show me the header. Now we've got that container. Remember that container is floating in the middle. So I can do that too. Border. 1 pixel solid, let's say green. That's hard to see, so let's do blue. That's fine. And now let's do the footer. Border, 1 pixel solid. I'll do red again. Okay, so you can see here that we've got a footer area, container area, and then our modified super wide header. And if we're really trying to copy this design, we have to consider that this design does not have a unique footer. In fact, I'd say this kind of is the footer. So maybe what I'm going to do here is, I can show it two ways. I'm going to show you how we can apply this to the footer area, and then I'm going to show you how you can do it as a separate modification to the body area. All right, give you a little flexibility. Because effectively, we just need a new division here. It's going to have a special transparency applied to it. So let's do it with this easy part with the footer. And we do this very simply. We're going to go to the footer area, and we're going to go ahead and make a new line, hit enter, enter. We say background. And one of the things that I wanted to demonstrate we had to do again is we have to drag that PNG file, that transparent PNG file, from our desktop over to our images folder. And I've already done that. That's called, I save this little time here, that's called transparent PNG. So I'm going to copy the URL again. And now we're back here with our footer. We're going to add a line background, and just like before, URL, and then it gives us the curly brackets, apostrophe, apostrophe, and now we're going to paste that URL in, or the path, and I'm going to delete everything that starts, I always have to erase, that starts before the WP content. Okay. Now you can see what's going on here, right? The transparency's there. Our footer is not really visible, so let's just, for demonstration purposes, make this super high. We're going to say minimum height 300 pixels. Oops, let's change it again. Let's do height 300 pixels. Okay. Now, this isn't really the effect we want, of course, but you can see that we've got the exact setup that's going on here, right? In other words, it's a transparency, a PNG file over the top of that background image. Okay, it's the exact same thing. Now, our problem is that in the model that we're trying to copy, it goes full width. So one of the ways we can fix this is we could take the footer area and modify it in the same way we did with the header. We got to break it out of that limitation. The limitation being that it's only a certain amount of width. But in this case, we're lucky, because remember the first time with the header video, how the header was inside of the container and the container had the width? Well, here we're lucky because the footer is not in the container. You can see it's separate, and it has its own CSS that says maximum width 960. So this is a pure CSS fix. Now we just can delete this or eliminate it or change it. And we could say something like 100%. Okay. So what I did is I left the value in place because it's part of the default style sheet, but I changed the footer max width from 960 pixels to 100%. Let's commit that. Going back to our custom CSS, our LabZip custom CSS. And again, I'm deleting anything that I'm not using here so that I remember what I've got. Let's reload the page, get rid of those colored lines for the borders. Let's remove the Firebug inspector. See if it worked. Now you notice something interesting happened. That didn't take hold. And the reason is that sometimes when you apply a change like this, you need to use what's called an override. And that's by adding the exclamation point important. And let's see if that fixes it, because sometimes you have one of the style elements that's got either an override in itself, or its position is bad and it just doesn't take. Or I've made a typo error. In this case, I'm thinking I made a typo error. So let's try this again. Since this isn't working, let's see if there's something obvious here. Oh, even better than that is I forgot to apply the background. I think I need some coffee. So let's go back in and do that background again. Now that we've got the footer full width, which I can see it's out there, we just need to color it and make it the right height. So sorry about that, folks. So what we're going to do is go back to footer. And we're going to make height, let's say 350 pixels. Okay. And now we got to go and grab that URL again from transmit. So copy URL. We're going to add that in here. Let's do it on the same line so we can copy the whole thing. Background, URL, apostrophe, apostrophe, put it in. Let's get rid of that FTP stuff so it doesn't bounce on us. It did anyway. Let's delete everything up to the first slash before WP content. There we go. Okay. Now let's copy that. And we're going to paste it back in here. Okay, so now we've got all of our elements and attributes. And when we refresh the page, voila. Okay, so it's still moving with the page because that's another story. But the good news is that this is the almost exact style that they have here. Now you can certainly adjust this and do other things, of course, but we've got our footer area and we can do all kinds of things. We can add in these as widgets, or you can add them as fixed elements. And so in our case, even though we don't have the same exact structure of the theme, we've got almost the same result. Now if we wanted to, we can go further and modify it so even the homepage widgets could be inside of this box, right? It really just depends on your imagination, but at least now we've got three areas. We've got the header, we've got the main body area, and we've got the footer. And those are pretty much in the same look and feel as what we're trying to emulate, right? And you also have understood, hopefully, how you can make a multi-layer effect where you have a background image on one element, and then you've got the transparent PNG file on the other one over the top. Now, we'll talk about how to do the fixed background and body and all that sort of thing, but it really is something that is clever. If we want to give you a hint, maybe I'll just feel generous here. Let's inspect this for a second. Let's see if I can do this on the fly. Okay, so basically, we've got, I'm going to just see what they're doing here. HTML, head, body. I'm just taking a look and I'm reading the code to see if I come up with a clue, because it's interesting. Here's the key right here. See inside of where they paste the background, they have a couple variables. No repeat, which means that the image does not repeat itself, like you'd see if there was tiling. Fixed, this is the one we need, fixed. And then they're saying it should be centered, left and right, and it should be at the top. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these exact variables, and we're going to go back over to our demo site, and we're going to look at our body background. See, we've got scroll, and even though our positioning is different, the scroll versus fixed is the key on the body background. So let's see what happens when we do it like this. Hey, check it out, guys. We did it. We did it. It's exactly the same way. So let's change that. We're going to go change ours in our CSS. Oops, make sure I do this correctly. I want to make sure I have the right closing semicolon. And now, when I take off the Firebug Inspector, wow, look at that. So we're getting really, really close to our final solution of emulating this site, right? And we've been doing this just 2 quick tutorials, right? I mean, there's nothing to this when you think about it. I'm going to give you all the code here too, which will make this much easier for you. Now, let's see if we could squeeze one more thing in here. Put the menu bar on the left, just text with no boxes. All right, now he's saying menu bar. And you know what, Lucia, I'm so sorry, because I don't know if Lucia is a male or female name, and I've been trying to be gender neutral, so forgive me. You don't have an icon avatar, so I'll say Lucia is asked whether we put the menu bar on the left. Well, for that, that's just a matter of content, and the content can be created using the homepage template, or one could go ahead and stick that section in there separately, as we've done before, by modifying a certain template. So let me show you. In our transmit FTP, we are looking for a template file that would by default not be here in the child theme, but we're going to go grab it. I'm going to show you how this works. Whenever you want to modify the parent theme, you could do so by grabbing any of the template files from the parent, duplicating them exactly into the child theme by name. And when you modify those child theme files, they will override the parent. So watch, we're going to go to WP content now, and we're going to go under themes, but now we're going to go to the parent responsive theme. And we're going to look for a template file called front page. And what I do is I right click and I duplicate it, and then I drag it over into the child theme. So now I've got front page copy. And now that I'm in the child theme, I remove the extra text so that it's the exact same name, front page. And let's open this up and examine it, see what we can change to the structure here. Now we can see here we've got our featured items and all this stuff. Let's match it up to what we see here so we have a reference point. If we inspect this with Firebug, we can see we've got our container, our familiar container, then we've got this wrapper, and then we've got a featured section, and we've got our widgets section, right? Features and widgets. If we wanted to make a new section, let's say if we looked over here, there's a text area. Now, the best way to do this would be to just stack up the widgets, quite frankly. I think that's the easiest way to do it. Now, one of the ways that we can accomplish the goal of having a section here that's 2 columns is just by adding a little bit of CSS. But the alternative way to doing it is to structure a little section ourselves. So just to give you a quick and dirty version, watch what would happen if I want to add to that template. If I inspect from this particular site, get the boxes container, they've got box left, box right, and then the clear section. That would all work just fine. But over here in responsive, we've actually got something even cooler because there's already CSS in place to make the columns. So let's take a look at what we've got over here. We've got this grid system. Okay, and you'll notice that when I roll my mouse over the grid column 460 and the featured image, we've got grid column 460 fit. We've basically got the structure already in place that we can add whatever we need. Now, if we're going to do this via widgets and we need the content to be accessible from the back end, it's a slightly different setup, which we can do as well. But I wanted to just show you that by using this grid column 460, you can make two columns that nicely fit the full 960 pixels width with a little space in between. And let's see what we can do to get creative here. Let's go ahead and add something into the template. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat a little, and I'm going to take this exact HTML. So I'm going to select the whole area there, and I'm going to copy the HTML. And the reason is because I'm going to go into the template, and I'm going to put it right below the featured image area. So let's go back over here. Notice I got division featured. I'm going to go down to where the end of the featured area is, and right before the sidebar widgets start, I'm going to paste this in. The point of doing this is just to show you that you shouldn't be afraid of the templates. Oh, and one other thing, like we did before, let's just keep a copy of this. So we're going to duplicate this. Just in case I mess it up, I can always come back to where I started. That's always good practice, right? All right, so now that I've pasted it, we're going to save this, and we should have a double featured image area now. As we do, right? So now one way to handle this is I can go ahead and just manually edit this and put whatever I wanted in there, and I can style it differently too, as long as I change the names of the classes or the IDs. So for example, if I was going to clean this up a little bit, we're going to call this featured 2. Let's put a hyphen in there so it's proper. And I'm just making this up as I go along. I want to get rid of some of this, so I'm going to just say blah, 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 and a new headline here. And what I'm doing is I'm just modifying this directly, because again, I'm trying to show you only that by putting in a unique section of HTML, you can put anything you want anywhere in the homepage template and also apply a separate style to it. So when I refresh this, we see here that our second area now is slightly different. And let's get rid of that image because we don't want to put that in there. So I'm going to go over here where it's got an image. Get rid of that for a second. I'm just going to put in some new text there instead. Blah, 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 blah also. Okay, now what we should have is two columns with two things of text, and the call to action we can get rid of in a second. Let's style this differently. So now that we've changed the name, we now have a new division here called Feature 2. We can right click and add a new attribute. And that didn't show very well because of the way the screen's set up. So when I right click, I can select New Attribute. And what happens is I can now type style equals, and I can put in something like background FFF. Okay. Now it's got a new bit of CSS here that I can play with. So let's drag this back down. Okay. And what we'll do here is let's change this. Let's make the background here black. So that's 000 instead of FFF. Okay, and let's say we make the color of the font is going to be white, and let's going to maybe round the corners or something, right? So border radius 5 pixel. Maybe make it a little more, make it 10 pixel. Okay, and let's put some padding in there, right? Maybe too much. Let's do it a different way. Let's do left margin. I want that text on the left to be. Oh, it doesn't work. I'm going to try something else. So let's do inside. We can change this new attribute. Style equals and padding left. 20 pixels. A little ham-fisted today. There we go. Okay, so what I've done here, and this is again just really super quick and dirty, I just wanted to show that what we can do is now modify the template, create some unique class name for this new division area, add whatever text we wanted in, and there's still some more over here, and then basically using the already defined grid system 460 460 have a left column and a right column. Now there's 1,000 other ways we can modify this, of course, but this is just to give you kind of the Lego building block effect of how quickly and easy we can mess around with this home page. And again, we would commit the CSS to the style sheet. So let's do that, and then we can preserve it as a model for everybody. So we've got feature 2. What we want to do here is see how we've got the element style. We want to use that ID of feature 2. So I'm going to copy this rule, and I'm going to go into my custom CSS, and now I'm going to say another note for additional feature area on front page template. I'm going to scroll down so you can see this better. Now here's where I have to put in the name. So I have to take the name of that ID, feature 2, and I need to put in the hashtag, which stands for ID. If it was a class, it would be a period. If it's an ID, it's a hash mark or hashtag. So divide feature 2, save that, and then we also want to check inside of there where we did this one over here. And now we've got the grid column 460 has a unique padding left, right? So what we want to do here is copy that declaration, and here's where we're going to do a combination of things. I only want that padding to apply to the grid inside of feature 2. So I'm going to say featured 2, then I'm going to put in the class, and the class is column 460. And if I'm going too fast, don't worry, I'm going to include this stuff later. But what I basically said here is that if we're inside of the division ID called feature 2, and furthermore, if we're inside of the class of column 460, then apply this element's attributes. And that limits it or fixes it to only working inside of this particular ID instead of working on any other place on the site. Okay, when we refresh this, it's stuck, and it's not beautiful, but it's functional. And I think we've gone really, really far today, much farther than I thought, but I hope you've gotten some value out of this. It's a new style I'm using to teach here of just kind of showing you as we go along some of the cool stuff that is going to make it fun for you to make modifications to your site and those of your clients. So we'll look for you on the next lesson, where I'm going to finish off the questions of Lucia. And until then, this is Spence, the evil genius, and I'll see you next time.